Hi, Assalamu alaikum, Sat Sri Akal, Namaste. My name is Assalamu alaikum. My name is Farheen Khan, and you're watching the Azeeza show. Last week we had a really great show. We had some of our male friends show up to talk about gun violence, and it was a really interesting discussion on sort of the impact that how to engage youth better, in particular when it comes to this type of around issues around gangs and guns, etc. So today I'm really happy to introduce our guest, Katarina McLeod. Katarina, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
And this show today is all about human trafficking. It's one of the things that I know you and I kind of connected on a couple of years ago,
Yep.
working on some stuff in Halton. Mm-hmm. Sorry. So tell me, what can you maybe tell our viewers who you are and what you do?
Okay, my name's Katarina McLeod. I run an organization, a non-for-profit called Rising Angels. Mm-hmm. That's been going for almost 4 years.
Right.
And it's an organization that helps women who have been prostituted mm-hmm. or human trafficked. Mm-hmm. So we walk alongside of them and we offer trauma-informed care, right. As well as we have counseling for the women. We offer practical help with their finances, mm-hmm. as well as we do a lot of advocacy and frontline training. We actually just wrote a manual right. For frontline workers. Okay. So we go and we offer training. It's a whole day training right. on how to understand the mindset of women and right. how to approach her and deal with the issues that this leaves the women with.
Yeah, I remember just doing a bit of research when I was at in Halton and mm-hmm. just hearing some of the stories of the women. It was so heartbreaking to know that women are going through so much, right?
Right, and the damage it leaves.
Yeah, exactly.
The mental illness that comes along with it,
absolutely.
And the PTSD is horrific, right?
Yeah.
So that's where we kind of come in to try to help them
right.
Be able to deal with their daily lives.
Okay, great. And how prevalent is this issue?
Oh, it's getting bigger and bigger.
Right.
I live in Peel, so we see that Peel is one of the largest hubs mm-hmm. For human trafficking. And I still talk to people who have no clue that it's happening here.
Right.
And when you think about human trafficking, you think about it abroad. Mm-hmm. You think it's bringing women over from other countries. And while that's true, it's our own Canadian homegrown girls that this
right.
is happening to.
Right.
So
then they're quite young, right?
Average age of entry is 13.
That's what, yeah.
Yeah.
And by the time they're 18, they're too old, right?
Well, yeah, then they're considered an adult. Right. So people aren't looking at what's led them there. Mm-hmm. There's a misconception when you hear prostitution or human trafficking, you think, these women are there because they choose to be. Even the women who feel that they've made a conscious decision, mm-hmm. there's always some underlying issue to what led them to become vulnerable to this to begin with. Yeah,
well, I know we had a couple of weeks ago, we had a show, we were talking about homelessness and
right.
sort of invisible homelessness. Mm-hmm. And one of the guests on the show was a lady named Natalie Kaminsky, and she was talking about how she'd also been a former sex worker. And one right. of the things that she said was poverty was my pimp, right? Mm-hmm. She was like, that's what I used to say, because she's like, why would I do it otherwise,
right. Right, I don't, yeah, and I don't feel that you would, come from a healthy background where there hasn't been trauma and mm-hmm. just wake up one day and go, hey, I'm going to do this.
Right.
I've never met a woman yet mm-hmm. that has really made a decision to say, hey, I love what I do and this is what I do. So, right. Our goal is to raise awareness around this and to help the women who are trapped or mm-hmm. coming out mm-hmm. To get a better life.
And when you've personally, you identify as a survivor, right?
Right.
Can you maybe tell us a little bit about your story?
I had been in abusive relationships my whole entire life. I started getting raped at 2 years old. That continued. No worries. That continued for a very long time, over a number of years. Mm-hmm. And I think that instilled something into me right. as a child, that I had no voice. And I really thought that men could do what they wanted, and if I didn't comply, that I would just get hurt. So I ended up in a very vulnerable position and ended up with men who were the same as the abusers from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And I actually went to a women's abuse support group, and I got lured from there. I was 21. Like I said, average age is 13. I was a lot older. I don't think mentally I was, because there had been so much trauma throughout my life right. and I didn't have good supports at that time. Mm-hmm. But I thought that I could save money right. and get away from my abuser. not realizing that this is a really slippery slope, and it's like a slow, I always compare it to a slow cancer, like it eats you and you don't even realize the damage that's done. So I spent 15 years there, and the drug addiction became worse. The violence inside of the industry was bad. I ended up meeting a pimp, and I thought that I would never be that girl, you know. I had been an independent worker, and I ended up coming across a pimp, and I really just was looking for that love and acceptance, and he loved and accepted me, or so I thought. And we had children together, and it just was a downward spiral from there. And it got to a point where I was so suicidal, I was so mentally unstable, I was a horrible, horrible mother. I had become a horrible person. You become so desensitized from people and just from society, because everything is around sex, every single thing in your life. That finally I was offered an out through a client, and I jumped at it, and I took it, and never looked back since.
Wow, that's remarkable. Yeah. I mean, I honestly, I've met you so many times. It's just like you inspire me each and every time I meet you.
Oh, thank you.
I can imagine like how difficult. I can't even imagine how difficult that was to leave that.
It's been very hard.
Yeah.
In the beginning, it is hard because the money is a huge issue, and having to learn how to do all the normal things that I didn't know, like how to budget a bank book, how to dress properly, how to speak properly, because you get a slang, you get a hardness that happens. So, you know, I came out when I was 36 years old, and I just felt really stupid because I didn't know how to do these normal things. And I had a great cheerleader and a great support system and an awesome mentor. And her husband walked alongside of me, and we created Rising Angels. So there is, I mean, I still struggle. There's a lot of mental health issues that I think I'll struggle with for the rest of my life, but it's learning how to live with them. And those are the things that I try to teach the girls, you know. PTSD is huge for us girls, disassociation, bipolar, there's all different kinds of stuff. And I just want for me to give hope to those women that you can live a normal life. It's not going to be easy. Who you were is gone, but you can become something, I think, even stronger and better. So
that's actually pretty amazing. I actually wanted to ask you something else. I remember when we were talking about so through Rising Angels, you're actually like supporting women that are coming through the process, right? And there's some of them are actually still in it, and they're trying to exit. So so how I mean, I remember before you were like, there are so many women that are like reach out to me on a day-to-day, right? So like, what are some of the, I guess there's two things. One is, you know, how do you identify, like for our audience, how would they identify if a girl is, you know, being lured into trafficking or is currently being trafficked? Let's start with that, and then I'll ask you the next question.
So, you know, I usually talk to parents, and I talk to different groups about, you know, if you all of a sudden see a girl who was doing good in school and her grades are starting to fail, or she's become disassociated, she's not attached to her peer groups or her mentors anymore, she starts doing drugs, she's coming in with, you know, stuff she couldn't afford to buy, new jewelry, clothes, dressing more scandalous. I would hear moms who said, I never knew my daughter was being human trafficked, but she would always go through my lingerie drawer. You know, so there was little telltale signs, there are little telltale signs, and this is something I think the schools have to be aware of. I've had a few girls who have been pimped out of schools.
I've heard about this.
It's really getting, it's worse. Now it's become the social norm. You know, pimping is cool. It's a way to make money. There's girls out there who are very provocative, they're broken, and they can, you know, charge to do some oral stuff in the bathrooms at school. So we're seeing this happen. So, I mean, watching a girl change, watching her start to, you know, isolate from people, or if she has a boyfriend and nobody knows about him, and it's usually an older guy. This always happens where it's an older guy, and, you know, he's coming alongside of her and giving her everything that she's been lacking, treating her like a princess, giving her that love, filling that hole in her heart, and then he turns and he's like, you know, baby, we can, you know, I owe money, or we could have the dream faster if you would just. And by now she's already been manipulated and she's fallen in love with this guy, and if he's okay with it, then it's not so bad, and I just want to be with him. And So then these girls are falling through the cracks.
Right.
So we're seeing it happen. As far as the girls who are reaching out to me who are already in, these are girls that want out but are horrified to come out, whether it be that they have a pimp and they're scared of the repercussions, they don't want to go to the police, or they just are like, what is life going to look like after this? And that's was a horrifying part for me, is what am I going to do?
Yeah.
I'm 38 years old. I was a prostitute for 15 years. What am I going to put on my resume?
Right.
I have no skills. I have nothing. Right? So a lot of these girls can't see life any better or see life beyond that.
Right.
And trying to, it's like taking somebody to trying to explain the ocean to somebody when they've never been.
Right.
You can't,
right?
Exactly. So for me, it's planting that seed.
Right.
And, you know, calling her, texting her, making sure she's okay, having a coffee with her.
Right.
And eventually she'll start to wean out, or she'll get the strength.
Right.
But it's knowing that you have a support team, that you're going to be okay. You know, you bring girls out of this and they're living below poverty line. You know, these girls can't work. Mentally and emotionally, they need time to heal, so they're ending up on disability.
Right.
And that's living below the poverty line.
Absolutely.
So it's a big struggle, right?
Right.
And I'm not saying that women are staying stuck there because of the money, but you become accustomed to a lifestyle, which makes it difficult to see beyond that. And the mental health issues that come along with it, right? So I deal with women who are calling me at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and they're cutting themselves. We're sending them off to the hospital. The mental health profession isn't doing a good job around it. They're just like, oh, they're, you know, as soon as they hear prostitution or human trafficking, girls are looked at different. And we had one girl who called me and she was like, I'm going to kill myself. And I said, go to the hospital. She sat for 8 hours and they gave her a card and sent her home.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Another young girl who was an avid cutter sliced her own throat. And when she was taken into the hospital, they were like, oh, she's just angry. And they let her go. So she wasn't informed. So they're not understanding what is happening.
Right.
I think there is this judgment that comes against women when you hear human trafficked or prostitution.
Right.
There's a judgment, like if they are making this decision, they're choosing it, and they're not understanding what's going on behind.
And there's circumstances that lead somebody to that point.
Right. So this is where, you know, I thought it would be really good to write a manual and to be able to go out and train front lines to understand what is going on.
Right.
And it's been successful so far.
Okay, great.
So yeah, we're just going to start doing more and
excellent.
Bring more
So
awareness.
we'll take a quick break, and then I'd like to hear more about this manual.
Thank
All right,
you.
we'll be back in just a minute. Welcome back. You're watching the Azeeza Show, and I'm here with Katarina McLeod talking about the issue of human trafficking. So, Katarina, you were just talking about a manual that you developed.
Right.
So, what kind of information would be like in that manual?
So the manual, it talks about human trafficking 101, but it goes into the mindset of women who have been trapped in the game or human trafficked, to understand how it changes a woman's personality, the trauma that it causes, how to approach her, the do's and the don'ts. There's a lot of stuff in there for frontline workers of how to just work with these women to get them to a better place, because everything I'm seeing is great, but we see a lot of the same things. And people aren't understanding what's really happened to her and why she doesn't trust you, why she's not just talking to you, why she's apprehensive about everything, and how to build that trust and rapport with her. But we also offer some tips in there for self-care of frontline workers, because I think that's huge. Burnout is a big thing in this field.
I remember feeling really sick afterwards, just emotionally so drained.
It's,
you know, doing that, even just the research, and being able to meet some of the women and interviewing them, it was really hard.
It's you know, it's vicarious trauma,
right?
And I know for myself, I still see a therapist every week, and I'm still learning what self-care is. I mean, I burnt out a couple of times for sure, but it's learning to take care of yourself first, so you can take care of the others. So this kind of offers a little bit of everything, what to look for, the signs, you know, stuff for moms. We're actually thinking of doing a manual for parents. We run a parents group every second Wednesday. For it's not just a parents group, it's for anybody who needs support, who's had somebody or is dealing with somebody who's gone through this.
Right.
And
Okay.
how for them to have support around it.
Excellent. And where would we find that information?
So you can go to our website, www.risingangels.net,
Okay.
and the information's on there.
Okay, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you were saying something about why do you think this is happening so much? Why do you think there's such a prevalence of it?
I really blame social media. I blame media, period.
Okay.
You know, we see the video games that are happening out there.
Mhm.
There's video games where you can buy a prostitute and then you can beat her up after.
That's ridiculous.
You know,
yeah.
you look at the music videos now.
Yes. Yep.
You know, these guys have, you know, a harem of women dressed scandalously, and this is looked upon as cool. The word pimp has been redefined as power and money, but cool to be one of these people, right?
Mhm.
So we're seeing this happen a lot. Even commercials are sexualized.
Yeah.
You know, you spray Axe cologne and you're going to get, you know,
That's
a
good.
woman.
Yeah.
So I think we've taken sexuality and kind of just desensitized everybody from it.
Mhm.
And now we're seeing, you know, these young kids where they're watching pornography, and pornography is free. A lot of it is free,
Yeah.
you know, and these are children who average age of a child watching porn now is 9.
Oh my goodness.
So you imagine you're a little boy or you're a little girl and you're watching pornography, which is now hardcore. It's about women being submissive. It's about power. It's about men, you know, pulling their hair and spitting on them and choking on them. And you have a little boy who hasn't even reached puberty seeing this. He's thinking this is what he has to do.
Right.
And same for the girl. So I really blame media and what they are doing and what our children are watching.
Mhm.
You know, when I grew up, it was Little House on the Prairie,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, Three's Company, those kind of things. Now
Exactly.
everything, swearing is in everything, sex is in everything.
Right.
And, you know, the sacredness of sex has just been demolished.
Right.
So I really do blame media for what is happening.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think we can do about that? Like, what do you think, you know, parents or viewers that are watching can do to change some of this?
Well, I think that being aware of what's happening with your children is key.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I tell parents, be nosy. Be nosy, go into your kids' passwords. If there's a diary, read it. You never know what's going on. We see a lot of these girls who are now doing sexting,
Mm-hmm.
you know, sending nude pictures or topless pics, and it's usually older guys that they're talking to and they have no clue, right?
Right.
We see these guys getting the girls off Facebook. We see this kind of stuff, so parents, be nosy.
Right.
Watch. You know, if your daughter is all of a sudden, you know, like I said, coming home, you know, at all hours of the night, or now she's doing drugs, or she's wearing different clothing, or she's depressed, or something's happening, talk to her.
Talk to her, yeah.
We need to be open with our children more than ever now.
Right.
You know, kids are going missing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people are being lured into trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
And it's horrific what is happening, and it's happening in our own backyard.
And Katarina, let me ask you something. I think sometimes when we hear about trafficking, we often think that it's, you know, a particular community,
Right.
or it's like, oh, it's that community, it's not my community,
Right.
right? How, like, you know, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, this is happening to everybody.
Right.
I mean, this is not, you know, something that's just going to happen to a particular community or population. This is happening to everybody, and this is happening to girls who are coming from good families.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
I work with a couple of moms who are very well off. You know, mom and dad, they're good, and their daughters are getting lured in. So I don't think this is just happening to one specific area. It's not.
Right.
And everybody is vulnerable to
And some of the
this.
girls are ethnically diverse as well?
They are,
Okay.
definitely.
Yeah.
But I think we
and
can't.
also like economically they're
Yes.
diverse as well. It's not necessarily just somebody who's coming from a poor family.
No.
Right.
No, most definitely not. You know, before there was this kind of, we could see what it was, you know, the broken girl and the girl in the group home and the girl coming from broken families. But now it's not. It's happening to everybody.
Right.
You know, we had one girl who was actually in college. She had, you know, was living in a dorm doing all of those things, and she got lured.
Wow,
And she came
yeah.
from a very well-to-do family,
Right.
and she ended up lured, and her life turned upside down for falling for a guy she believed was her boyfriend, who turned out to be a pimp.
Yeah.
So I think parents need to be aware of where their children are going, who their children's friends are.
Yeah.
Get involved. And I think the only way we're going to be able to bring a movement on this is bring awareness, exactly like you're doing today. So I thank you for that. But we need awareness around this.
Yeah. And do you think there's like limits as well around, like, you know, gaming and stuff like that parents should be, you know, wary of?
Well,
Like,
yeah, I really do. I can remember my son, he used to he did the gaming, you know, online with everybody, and he would always come to me and say, oh Mom, some guy's asking me these questions or stuff like that. There are parental controls. You can put on stuff, you know, and again, knowing your kids' passwords, you know, monitoring them. And I know as parents, we live in this busy world now, you know what I mean? And the computer's the babysitter, the TV's the babysitter, but come on. We have to be more involved with our kids. These are our kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, I mean, the damage afterwards is like lifelong.
It's lifelong. It's, you know, you think about, you know, I say to people all the time, I say, you know, whether, you know, you think you've made a choice to go into prostitution or human trafficking, and I really link them together. Prostitution and human trafficking to me are one and the same. I don't care if it's somebody physically holding you or it's mental chains that are holding you from where you come from. It's something that's left you vulnerable to this, right? And the damage that happens, this is paid rape. That's exactly what it is. So these women are getting raped multiple times a day, dozens of times a day, and they're being moved from hotel to hotel. And you know, there's a lot of shaming that goes on in the family. There's some girls who don't want to talk because of the families. They don't want to go to the police because of the repercussions that they fear from the traffickers.
And so these girls are actually living still at home with their families.
They are.
They just don't know about it.
Right. So we had one girl who was lured off of Facebook, and she was 15 years old. Lured off of Facebook. She went to school, and then she would go with her trafficker and do parking lot calls. We had another girl who was going to school, and the trafficker would actually pick her up as soon as the bus dropped her off and take her to prostitute for him all day long and then drop her off. And the school never informed the parents that she had been missing all this time. So this is where the schools need to be involved. I think this is a community issue, and everybody needs to take a piece of the pie in order to have success in changing what's happening.
And I think one of the things that just sort of comes to mind is, like, I mean, you know, certain communities like look at, I mean, I don't think it's even a community thing. I think it's generally speaking, like, you know, there's a lot of stigma around just the concept of rape itself, right? So, you know, if I've seen anyway, there's, you know, when we used to work in the sexual assault center, it was almost like once she had that experience that, you know, families would kind of detach from her, right? Or there'd be so much shame involved that she wouldn't be able to live with her family anymore, that kind of thing. So, you know, if that's just one instance, right? Like, imagine here, there's like this woman who's going through it multiple times all the time, right? The amount of, you know, difficulty she would have to go through to be able to get to that point of healing, right? Yeah,
there's a lot, you know, I see a lot of shame happening from a lot of parents, where these girls are involved, but then I see a lot of parents who are very supportive. I think it's very hard for these girls because one other way that I've seen them getting lured is through blackmail. And so we have had situations where girls have gone to parties, been drugged, made to have sex with multiple men where it's been videotaped, and then the threats there. Well, we're going to put this up on social media, or we're going to show it to your family if you don't do this kind of stuff. So, you know, this is things that I think parents have to be aware of what's going on. And yes, this is, you know, 13 years old is the average age now. But there are girls, like I said, I was 21 years old when I got lured in. I was very vulnerable. I came from a lot of brokenness. So, you know, I think awareness and education around this and showing the red flags and how to educate and how to do those things are going to be preventative for some women.
I remember watching this as part of my research. We were looking at, like, you know, looking at the pimps as well, right? And some of the work, I mean, some of the discussions that people have had with these pimps afterwards, journalists like Toronto Star and stuff like that. And, you know, one of them talking about how, like, it's like when you sell the girl the dream, right? Of the pink house and the white picket fence, you know? What do you think about that?
I think that's 100% accurate. You know, these guys are master manipulators who eat, breathe, and sleep how to manipulate and get women. And it is, see, a lot of girls, we all want love. We all want love, and I mean, you've got a guy, an older guy, especially if you're a younger girl who's paying attention to you. You know, you feel special, like, you know, even though what is a 20-year-old going to have in common with a 13 or 14-year-old? Nothing,
exactly.
But when you're 13 and 14, I remember being 13 and 14, you know, and getting attention, it felt good. So when this is happening to these girls, and this is what they're saying, we can be together, we're going to have babies, we're going to get married, you know, the typical Cinderella dream. You know, and it's a facade. It's not happening, but these girls are falling for it. and they're believing it. And even after these guys are saying to them, well, you know, if you would just sleep with a couple of my friends for some money, or if you did this, we could make money faster to get our dream. These girls are so manipulated and brainwashed that they really think it's okay. And then it starts and they end up stuck.
And they're moving all across the country, right?
They are. I mean, 401 corridor is huge. You're seeing, you know, the girls moving all from hotel to hotel. We just went and we did a training up in Fort Francis, and I couldn't believe, you know, going down Trans-Canada Highway, some of the little seedy hotels that were there. And you know the girls are being moved and, you know, through those hotels. So it's scary. But this is, you know, I can do the work of bringing around the awareness and helping mentor the girls, but we need police, we need mental health, we need children's aid, we need social service workers, we need everybody on board and on the same page to make changes. You know, I've said it before, you know, everybody talks about, oh, collaboration, and I don't see it happening. Very, very few people are collaborating.
Philosophically, there's always that divide, right? Of like, you know, are they, you know, victims? Do they have a choice? Are they, you know, supposed to be? You know, and it's very sort of, you know, police-centric, right? It's not necessarily always very survivor-centric.
It's not.
That's part of the issue.
And that's what we try to be. And the organizations that I align myself with, I want them to be for the victim. Because it is about the girl. You know, whether there's an arrest or not, really I don't care. I care about their mental health.
Do you have any last minute words for the audience or for women that are watching that might be affected by this issue?
I think for the women that are watching, that I want to give hope. You know, I did it and it's possible. And, you know, if you need help, reach out, talk to somebody, contact me. You know, I'm there, I'll talk to you. Even if you're in and you're scared, you're not sure what's happening, it's fine. You know, everything you talk to me about is confidential. That there are other choices. There is help out there to get you out, that you're not alone. And I think that's something that I want women to really understand who are trapped here, is that you can have a life after this. And it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. Thank you so much for being here, Katarina. This was really great.
Thank you. So to our audience, this is a very difficult topic. You know, human trafficking is something that's really happening, and it crosses all communities. It's not just one. So if you hear about it, if you know, start to see signs, please reach out to Katarina and you know, to Rising Angels. There's a lot that can be done. All right, until next week, take care.